What's up guys? Welcome to AnimeKouhai. If you'd like to help me out, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel.
There was fear, yes, but more than that, the members were fascinated by Gobta's and his goblin rider's courage. It made them realize that now it was their turn to make an effort. Hakuro felt his anxiety dissipate a little as he sized up his group. Its members had been thoroughly trained to deal with all kinds of situations, but there would still doubtlessly be casualties in their first battle. He did wish, somewhere in his heart, that he could have done additional training, but there was nothing more he could do. The enemy wouldn't wait for them. Under Benimaru's plan, Gobta's force would stick to their stalemate for as long as possible. It'd be bound to make the enemy impatient, he said. The tanks didn't have infinite shells, so the rain of bullets had to stop at some point. That's when Hakuro's force would come into play. They'd hit the enemy's supply forces, seize their goods, and make it a cinch to seize these so-called tanks. As a secondary objective, they were tasked with uncovering the hidden leaders, the strong men among the enemy, but that, they could play by ear. Hopefully if they exist, they'll come up to me, Hakuro thought, although that, too, was just a matter of luck. This is their first battle. If they're consumed by fear, they're bound to die. I wanted to ease those fears as much as possible, but we'll just have to see. For now, all Hakuro could do was pray they succeeded, and that everyone came out of it safe. But those fears turned out to be unnecessary.
Listen to me.
Suddenly, Rimuru channeled an order to the green numbers through Hakuro's skill. Hearing it was all it took for the monster's anxieties to be quelled. An inexplicable elation rose up among them. Their bodies felt warm, as if they'd catch on fire.
To eliminate the enemy as quickly as possible.
Now Rimuru's words, or his orders, would be going into effect. They made Hakuro chuckle.
I see I've worried for nothing. Did you hear that, all of you?
Yes, sir.
Then let's go. Your patient waiting is over. Go and unleash your full powers.
Before Hakuro could finish his words, the monster army rushed off at a furious pace. 10 or so minutes later, the infantry guarding the Empire's supply teams were lined in a horizontal formation, ready to intercept the monster army. The sudden surprise attack almost threw them into disorder, but they were the elites of the Empire, and they immediately regained their bearings. Some of the platoons used armored vehicles for transport as shields to shoot at the monsters with. At first glance, the Imperial forces seemed to have the upper hand, as befitting an army with such a decisive numerical advantage. But the green numbers weren't intimidated. Despite being exposed to gunfire, the scale shields provided to the front row proved handy. Unlike a bow, a rifle shot does not travel in an arc. The purpose of small arms fire is to suppress the enemy at close range, and as long as the front row didn't take any hits, worthwhile suppression would never happen. This was, after all, still a world of swords and sorcery. With their unthinkably high lethality, guns had the power to change every tactical textbook in the land. But this world had magic, and thus a single bullet wasn't necessarily enough to neutralize an enemy. For that, slashing attacks with swords and axes were more effective than bullets striking a single tiny point of the body. The Empire had great pride in all its new weapons, but not even they were enough to institute a paradigm shift, a full change in the times. If not, their commander decided, it was time to break out a new weapon. So the next order came down from on high.
All forces, switch from rifle fire to your spell guns. Maintenance teams, join the main force and bring only the most important supplies with you.
The standard rifle, a weapon recreated from knowledge brought from another world, was ineffective against monsters. They did have some success in the experimental stages, but that was only against unarmed, essentially naked creatures. But if that was the case, there was always magic. These spell guns, wieldable even by ordinary foot soldiers, had fire lance magic engraved on them. That, the commander thought, would be enough to pierce through most monsters and burn them alive. Unfortunately, that supposition was beyond naive. The green numbers were equipped with the latest in unique class armor. Garm had hammered out the scales of Charybdis to create their scale shields, and they could deflect far more than just lead bullets.
No good, sir. The enemy force is immune to magic.
The true value of these scale shields was the high resistance to magic they offered. But that wasn't the only nightmare striking the Imperial army. From the skies above flew in the Wyvern Riders, the elites of the blue numbers, led by Ultima.
Drop ammo.
With that sweetly voiced order, the ground was engulfed in flames. It was a flare bomb-based ranged attack. Not a terribly powerful one, but it had ample killing force against the Imperial infantry. But it was the sound, in particular, that sowed confusion across the battlefield. It made the support soldiers not used to fighting, mechanics, medics, and so forth, unable to keep up with the changing situation. Soon, the order to join the main force was no longer being heeded, leading to even more unnecessary casualties. It was a relief for Hakuro to see that the battle turned out to be more lopsided than he feared.
Hey there, Hakuro. These kids are under my command, but do you mind if I leave them to you?
Ah, Miss Ultima, I don't mind that. No, but...
Hakuro gave Ultima a good-natured greeting as he watched her jump down from her wyvern's back. The difference between his attitude with her and with his soldiers was like a yawning chasm.
You don't? Great, thanks so much.
Ultima, for her part, was acting like a cute little girl begging her grandfather for a treat. If Veyron or Zonda saw her like this, they'd no doubt wonder if they were hallucinating. They'd never tell her that, of course, but...
Certainly, certainly. By the way.
What is it?
Well, you see, Miss Ultima, I had a question for you. Are you close to Lady Carrera, perhaps?
I dunno about calling her lady and me miss, but I'll let you off the hook, Hakuro. Anyway, the answer's simple. We hate each other.
Ultima was still all smiles and cuteness, but there was something frightening about her presence in that moment. She was, as it turned out, extremely good at this feigned friendliness. She was actually brutal and ruthless by nature, and those two sides of her fluctuated so much, you wouldn't be faulted for thinking she had a split personality. Even so, Ultima always paid due respect to those older than her, so that aspect of her went wholly unnoticed with most people.
Oh, no? A pity.
Why'd you ask?
Well, I was just, wondering if you knew Agera, one of Lady Carrera's men.
Hakuro picked his words carefully. The demon Agera looked a lot like a certain person Hakuro knew. In fact, they were virtually body doubles. That person was none other than Byakuya Araki, Hakuro's grandfather and martial arts teacher. He was thus keenly interested in this Agera, but the demon himself didn't even seem to notice Hakuro. Was it because old age changed his appearance too much?
Sorry, I dunno. I'm not too interested in him.
Ultima said plainly.
But if you're that curious, why don't you ask him yourself?
She made it sound so casual. Hakuro nodded his agreement.
You're right. I suppose I was overthinking it.
Yeah, that's an easy habit to fall into. But you better think about that later, huh? The battle's more important right now. You don't want Sir Rimuru yelling at you, do ya?
With a final word or two of thanks, Ultima flew off into the sky once more. Hakuro, watching her go, had a bit of a confused look on his face.
Look at me. I keep telling people not to let distraction seize your mind in battle, but it seems I need to work on that myself. Best make up for this error as quickly as I can.
Then he drew his blade, ready to rule the battlefield as the Sword Ogre. Major General Faraga was stunned by the scene before him. His fortresses in the sky boasted unstoppable defense, thanks to a network of barriers overseen by teams of elite magicians, but now one of them had been shot down by a single blow from a monster. According to an investigation conducted by the Imperial Intelligence Bureau, this was an uncommon race of creature known as the Dragonewt. It essentially had the fighting power of a humanoid dragon, but what Faraga saw happen before him was something well beyond that description.
Who is that freak? What kind of bad intel did the IIB send me?
Were they sending him falsified intel in order to take a wizard like him down? The thought occurred to him, but not even he could swallow that one. No, that couldn't be. Those guys literally transformed before my eyes. Is this the morphological change seen in some monsters, like in the book my master wrote? It has been said that certain monster races could freely change between two forms at will, one suitable for everyday life and another geared more for battle. The Dragonewts they were fighting now were an evolved form of lizardmen, with wings giving them flight and breath attacks that came in a variety of elements. They were a B-level threat as a monster, and while you didn't want to pick a fight with one for no reason, they weren't a major threat to an airship. Or they shouldn't have been. But this was different.
What could be going on?
Faraga turned to his aide, helplessly confused as he tried to reconcile their intel with the reality before him.
I'm deeply sorry, sir. According to a report from the person who measured the energy values of the enemy monster, the statistics rise greatly after the transformation. They discovered that the final value is several times the standardized level for an A rating.
Several times. So over an A? And they're completely immune to magic on top of that?
Despite Faraga's ranting on the subject, he didn't quite have it right. Gabble's force boasted very high resist magic defense, but they weren't impervious to it. A hypothetical cancel magic wasn't in their repertoire. It was just that the airship's magic attacks weren't strong enough to break the multi-layer barriers protecting them.
I hate to admit it, but from this situation at hand, I can only assume that our magic attacks are not working, and the enemy's magic is shooting down our airships, our pride and joy.
I can see that for myself, Faraga wanted to say. But he held back, trying to keep a cool head. There was nothing to fear from a flock of 100 or so Dragonewts. No matter how excellent their armor was, he thought, it couldn't be a match for the Empire's most advanced weapons. When those 300 wyverns fled, he believed victory was assured. Well, no. Honestly, Faraga felt uneasy about it. Maybe it was his many years of battle experience, but something was giving him an unpleasant premonition, and he didn't like it. So my hunch was right, then? But for now, we need to come up with countermeasures first. With that in mind, Faraga turned his attention to the battlefield anew.
If we're talking explosive growth, then each one of them's a high-level magic-born equivalent. A hazard-level threat or maybe even a calamity if we're unlucky. Do I have that right?
Yes, sir. That's what I heard from our analysts.
Abominable. Sheerly abominable. If magic worked on them, even an A ranker could be handled well enough. So what about the one in the leader role?
That?
What? What is it?
Sorry, sir. Allow me to brief you.
The aide faltered a bit as he looked at the report, but one glare from Faraga, and he resumed reading it to him. What Faraga heard made him want to cringe.
Over 10 times? Are they sure about that?
It's true, sir. There were no malfunctions in the measuring devices. That particular individual has over 10 times the energy of any of the others there.
Faraga was speechless. Even Gadra, who had gone through the cycle of reincarnation many times to build his powers, couldn't achieve such an absurd amount of magic force. This level was more along the lines of a demon lord.
There was nothing about this particular monster in the IIB documents. He did not participate in the battle tournament the monsters held, so his fighting force is apparently unknown.
According to one spy we sent in.
Another aide added.
This one was making a presentation about medicinal herbs at the event instead. He had some interesting things to say, but now that I think about it, perhaps that was their way of hiding a disaster-level threat from the world.
Faraga, listening to his aides express their opinions, concluded that it had to be true. What they saw just now truly was a transformation. They had kept their forces under wraps to catch the enemy off guard, and now that they knew the airships were basically armed with nothing but magic, they revealed their true selves. They really got one over on us, he thought.
That's it for this video, guys. Thank you for always watching my videos and supporting my channel. Shout out to the new members of AnimeKouhai supporters: Vongala Tsunasa, Sayonori, Blaine Trevino, CoinPH, Mikia Selesgi, Luis Hernandez, Jay Wright, Alfredo Renteria, Arnav Ajay, Naif Mac. Thank you so much for helping out. I'll see you guys in the next video.